In the middle of a deposition, the defense attorney was yelling at me, claiming that I can't make that objection. And she turned around and said to me, "You are not creating a video about this and putting it up on YouTube, are you?" Would you like to know what this is all about? Come join me for this walk around the neighborhood as I share with you exactly what this is about. Hi, I'm Gerry Oginski, a New York medical malpractice and personal injury attorney. This was a wrongful death case, and my client, the surviving family's spouse, was being questioned by this attorney. And now this attorney was taking forever to ask my client all of these questions about what had occurred in this particular case. My client did not have a lot of detailed information. This was before the courts changed the rules that said, hey, there's unlimited time in which you have to question witnesses in a medical malpractice case, an accident case, or even a wrongful death case. So in this particular scenario, this defense lawyer was now on day number 3 of questioning my client on what should have been only a few-hour deposition for day number 1. So instead, she was dragging this out, and I suspect it was because she needed the billing. That's my suspicion. I never actually confronted her about it, but at one point during my client's deposition on day number 3, I got fed up. She was asking questions that I felt were totally inappropriate. And now I objected to certain questions she was asking. Before you go saying, hey, wait a second, she has an absolute right to ask certain questions, and you know what? I agree with that. She does have a right to ask certain questions. However, there is a limit. And there is a limit as to what type of questions she can ask. So I rightfully, in my opinion, was raising certain objections, and now the fact that we had gone on for so long, that certainly played a part. So she started getting upset with me, and this was a very experienced attorney. She was a very good, experienced trial lawyer. And now she started arguing with me and escalating the pitch of her voice. She started screaming at me. And I'm sitting there listening to this, and I can't understand why, because there's no rational basis, no rational reason for her to have escalated her pitch and her volume level, and now she's really yelling and screaming. And now I'm trying to de-escalate it by talking quietly and by responding quieter than she was certainly escalating it. And at one point in her rant, she turns to me and says, "I hope you're not going to put me in this type of video that you put up on YouTube." And I just looked at her and I smiled and I said, "If you continue, I most certainly will." And that caused her to stop, to pause, to look at me. And she just had that deer in the headlights look. I said, "If you continue this nonsense, I most certainly will create a video that describes your behavior, that describes your actions, that describes the nonsense questions that you are asking my client, the fact that you have prolonged this deposition, which should have ended 2 days ago. I most certainly will do that." And all I heard from her was, at which point things took a dramatic turn for the better. Within about a half an hour, she wrapped up her questioning. And at the end of the deposition, rather than having a pleasant conversation, even though we may have disagreements about the questions being asked or the topics that my client is permitted to answer, now, instead of having that pleasant conversation or having an honest conversation about what she thinks about this particular case or my client as a witness and what I think about this particular case and the problems that the defense has, instead, she packed up her bag and scurried out of the room without giving me another look. That was remarkable. And that was fascinating to me. Why? Because not only was she familiar with the fact that I create these educational videos on YouTube for people to understand how these types of cases work, but she was terrified in her rant that I would actually go ahead and create a video about her and what she was doing. Now, I will tell you, I had no intention whatsoever of spending my time and energy talking about her because, number one, I would never mention her by name. But her actions were outrageous. In that instance, we wound up settling the case a number of years later, but no thanks to her, this turned out to be a very contentious deposition when in fact there was no need for it. I find that the best trial attorneys who are questioning my client in a pretrial process known as a deposition, they are the ones who know what questions to ask. They are the ones who know what questions not to ask because they're not needed during the course of a trial or even during the course of discovery. This attorney, even though she had been very good in the past, and even though I had seen her on trial a few times, I don't believe she truly understood the details of this case. Because if she did, she never would have spent 3 days going ahead and questioning my client. And I turn that around and say, you know what? If she was going to be trying this case, which I don't think she was, but another trial attorney was going to be doing that, in order to prepare for trial, they would have to read the transcripts of all 3 days' depositions. And that's a huge undertaking. And I guarantee you that the trial attorney would have read these transcripts and gone through and said, what is this attorney doing, asking all these nonsense questions that I could never use the answers to? It's a waste of time. And that's why I mentioned earlier in this video that the reason I suspected that she was spending so much time doing this, asking nonsense questions, is solely for billing purposes. So why do I share this information with you? I share it with you just to open your eyes and to help you understand how these types of cases work in the state of New York. You know, I realize you're watching this because you likely have questions or concerns about your own matter. Well, if your matter did happen in New York, but you have not yet started a lawsuit and are thinking of doing so, and still have questions that need to be answered, what I invite you to do is pick up the phone and call me. You know, I answer questions like yours every single day, and I'd love to chat with you. You can reach me at 516-487-8207, or by email at Gerry, Gerry, at Oginski-law.com. That's it for today's video. I'm Gerry Oginski. Have a wonderful day.